All right, it is Thursday, May 4th, and this is our weekly developer meeting. We will do some quick introductions and then get into some issues to talk about. I'll go ahead and start the introductions. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California, and I am very excited about the 125 release coming up soon. That's it for me. Turning it over to Justin.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado, and mostly help out with infrastructure.
I am Luke McCormick, coming to you from San Ramon, California, web project manager. Still ear on various things, and I'm looking forward to trying to promote the 125 release in various ways. Tim?
Right, I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim. Relatively fresh back from an invigorating week in MidCamp in Chicago, talking about Backdrop and Drupal, and also, as usual, excited about our release and what comes next. So that's it. Back to you, John.
All right. So before we get into issue discussion, a few community announcements. If anyone else wants to do the video live streams for these meetings, we would love to get more people set up with access to Backdrop's YouTube channel, and people trained on how to get Zoom to stream to YouTube. So let us know about that. If anyone else wants to help set up these weekly agendas, all you need is access to one template file, and then every week you just copy the template and update things that need to be updated. So hopefully that's pretty easy for people too. We just need more people to have access to the agendas. Blog posts, there aren't currently any draft blog posts other than mine, and I want to thank Tim and Luke and Greg and everybody who read my blog post and left feedback. I have the Google Doc. I am working on it. I do hope to be getting that out soon. So hopefully that'll come shortly after 125. And speaking of 125, we are going to be working on a blog post highlighting some of our fantastic new features. I went through some of the issues the day we came out with the preview release, but most of them do not have the little paragraph on the bottom that's like text to announce new feature. Yeah, so I had planned to go through and update those, but I just got too tired. I did all the other updates on the issues that didn't require writing for the blog post. So if anyone else wants to have a look at each of those issues and add a little paragraph, or it doesn't even have to be big, just a sentence or two describing the feature, then that would be really great, because it'll make writing the blog post easy. If not, I will try and get to that later this week. And then this week we had a bunch of new module releases. We have one for the S3 file system module. We have one for views natural sort. We have one for HTML custom text views field module. And then last week, we also had a few, I'm not sure they were mentioned, so I'm just going to mention them again. Other view filter, Mastodon, Toot, and field read only. So we've got a lot of activity in our community lately, which is very exciting. Okay, that's it for community stuff, unless anyone has any other announcements. No. All right, so the Backdrop 125.0 preview release came out, I think it was Tuesday night, might have been Monday night, I don't remember. It came out earlier this week. And so anyone who wants to give Backdrop 125 a test, I would encourage you to try the preview. You can get it two ways. You can either download or clone directly from GitHub and try our latest 1.x dev branch, or you can go to the More Ways to Try page from the backdropcms.org website. And the very last option on the page, if you scroll to the very bottom, it gives you a link to the a sandbox site that will show you what's in the latest version of Backdrop. So that's a good place to test things too. Here, Tim's gonna show us where to find that.
Yeah, it's at the bottom, right?
Yep.
There we go.
X.
Try your latest 1x branch. There we go. Try the dev preview.
There are a good handful of new features in there, some of which could really use user experience testing, particularly for menu blocks and creating content types and that sort of thing. So just making sure that everything makes sense before we do the release. And then some of the issues we got in have follow-ups. The first one we talked a little bit about in the last meeting is the menu block UI. We added a new option so you can control the way the top level links behave on small screens or mobile devices. And that was an accessibility improvement so that you can choose an option that makes it easier for people on using screen readers to be able to navigate the menu items and open the sub menus specifically. But it would be great if people could look at that interface and let us know if the options make sense the way they are. We have a follow-up issue. The issue is number 6093 that has some alternative text for the labels of the new option and the like checkboxes or radios options for the new option. So if anything in there is confusing, we've got some alternates. It would be good to know if our alternates are an improvement or if we have other ideas of how to make that better. Another issue we got in is the ability, so we've defined, much like we have an administrator role that you define on any given site, and that role automatically gets all permissions. We now have a new editor role, and the only thing the editor role does is it'll automatically get access to new node types when they're created. We may later be expanding this to include things like taxonomy vocabularies or anything else we find might be a good fit for editors, but right now the new setting only controls the content type form. And so it would be great to have people go and test the process of creating content type, make sure it works as you expected. You'll see the admin box is checked, and now some of the editor boxes are also checked, and those permissions are set when you're creating the content type. And then we have two follow-up issues to that change. One of them is to limit the options an editor gets out of the box. I don't have a link to that, do I? I don't have a link to that. There we go. Do now. So this is issue number 4. Is that right? 4339. No, here it is. Issue number 6101. So 4339 is also related, so we can look at that at the same time. But both of these are follow-ups. So right now, when you install a new version of Backdrop, the editor role gets the permission to delete any pages, delete any posts, and delete any cards. But for every future content type, you have to manually decide if you want them to be able to delete any content or only their own content of that type. And so there's a little bit of a risk there because usually, deleting content on a Drupal site is irrecoverable. But we're only letting people delete those 3 content types out of the box. So if you have a rather robust Backdrop site with lots of different content types, you probably have limited access the way you want to have it set for all the other content types. What this change does is now, because we're adding this option to automatically set the permissions every time you create a new content type, it made me a little nervous that we're allowing people for a new install of Backdrop starting in 125, we would automatically be allowing all editors to delete all content on every site. And that made me a little nervous because editors don't necessarily get the permission to delete all content on all sites, and by assuming that, we're assuming something that does allow a fair amount of risk. I feel like people are generally very cautious with their administrator accounts. They're not quite as cautious with their editor accounts. It just sort of opens up a hole that my little security spidey sense said this maybe is too much permission to be granting by default. So there's 2 follow-up issues. One of them is to change the pull request that we just merged that allowed all permissions for editors to be delete own content, but not delete all content. And then the second one is a change to the page post card so that it's consistent with that. So for new installs only, the page post card will get delete own, but not delete any on those node types also. So we'll be handling all node types consistently, where editors will get all permissions except delete any for those as well. So if my explanation made sense to anyone, it would be great to get feedback on those issues. So far, it looks like everyone is in agreement. A couple people are like, I'm in agreement, but I could go either way. And then Greg is pretty much adamantly in the, I think editors should delete all content side of the fence. So it would be great to just get more feedback on that to see whether anyone else feels strongly one way or the other. So both of those issues are related to that same change. And then I think we had one other. Oh yes, this is issue number 6095. And this is a follow-up to, we got an issue to add a pager option for our search results. So right now there's pager options that are available for views, but the same pager options that are available for views are not available to search results. We expanded that. So now search results has the same option as views, but there's a bug in the search results pager. And so the issue number 6095 is just to resolve that bug in that pager. And then I'm just going to check the list one more time. Permissions. That's it. So we've got 4 follow-ups, and those all came after the preview was released. Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts about those? We have a couple of other issues on our agenda we can roll into. No? Okay. Kind of like Nate to be here for the last one, so hopefully he'll show up by then. The next one is issue number 2949. And this, I think we talked about it 2 weeks or so ago, adds back a token that existed in Drupal 6 and was missing from Drupal 7 that allows you to specify all of your taxonomy tree. So for example, if you wanted to create a path alias for your tags and your tags had a hierarchy, you could do something like country, state, city, and they would all be separated by slashes. We currently have a similar option for menu path where you can navigate sort of up your menu path. You can create a token that's, first level / second level / third level. We don't have a matching one for taxonomy. And we did have that in Drupal 6. This is sort of like a Drupal 7 regression where we're trying to unregress in Backdrop. If you have a site that's navigation is based off your taxonomy system, it comes in really handy. So just adding a note here that this issue 2949 has a pull request that needs testing. So that's where we're at today. And then the last issue, I was hoping for Nate to get back before we talk about it. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about before we get into that? Is there anything in the forum this week?
There was nothing in the forum. I looked. Yeah. It's not a core issue, but I have something I'd like to at least mention. Came up at mid-camp. It's a contrib sort of issue that affects. It's kind of a central thing, though. This isn't too much of a tangent to stall until Nate gets here. We were talking about the soft landing initiative, which is all about Drupal end of life, Drupal 7 end of life, and helping people get off Drupal 7 of life. We have been working closer in recent months with the Drupal Association. And one of the things that has come up from time to time is what are the options to move from Backdrop to Drupal, to modern Drupal? And we often say that migrating from Backdrop to Drupal, to modern Drupal should be pretty similar to migrating from Drupal 7 to modern Drupal. It occurred to me that there is a Drupal 7 to upgrade status module, which gives you what your status is, comparing. Mostly, I think what it does is compare whether the modules you're using have equivalents in modern Drupal.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, maybe it would be a really easy win to just port that module to Backdrop and have a Backdrop to modern Drupal.
I saw
upgrade.
that module. I was wondering what it was doing. That's great.
And so Justin, the other Justin, went ahead and just ran it through Coder Upgrade to see what would happen. As we were doing that, I realized, well, this is going to be a little bit more complex than that, because we're going to have to figure out somehow to sort of it's the Drupal 7 repo and the modern Drupal repos are together, and the Backdrop repos for contrib modules are not. So there might be some simple magic we can do, because assuming that namespaces are the same, where we
Well, I
can do
think
the same kind of check. But
it shouldn't matter, because so I did the same thing for the Backdrop upgrade status module, where we did
Mhm.
have to do a lot of refactoring because we had to check, take the names of the Drupal module and then check the Backdrop repository. But this shouldn't require that, because you're just taking the names from the site you're currently running and comparing them against Drupal.org.
okay,
So that should already be what it does. There shouldn't be any need to check the Backdrop repository if you're moving to Drupal, modern Drupal. I don't know if the Drupal 7 upgrade status module ever worked for Drupal 8. Like, there's some weirdness around the versioning
oh,
where it's like a lot of Drupal 8 modules became 2.0.
right, yeah,
So you might want to check, just make sure the Drupal 7 version already takes that before you spend too much time working on the Backdrop version
Right.
doing that, because it might there might be some open issues against that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Justin showed me it working on a Drupal 7 site, and
Okay,
it seemed to be providing good information, but
Okay,
it wouldn't hurt to double check that one more time before
Yeah.
we go too far. But I just wanted to raise this, as it would be a great thing for us to do in terms of this whole Drupal 7 end of life initiative, and in terms of our relationship with the Drupal community right now, to show that we're at least putting some work into, that kind of a relationship where it could go either way. And this could be some really low hanging fruit potentially. So
You
I
might-
don't know if I have the skills to solve. So Justin did an initial port of the module, and I told him to go ahead and put it into the contrib space, just so that we could maybe get other eyes on it. But
Yep.
I know it's not working right now.
okay.
But I don't know how bad it's not working. So we could check on that. So
Another thing I was thinking of, so for the Backdrop upgrade status module, I had to add a sort of a compatibility layer check, because there are a bunch of modules that like names changed or things that we included in core, and I wanted to be able to
Mhm.
note that. We're probably going to have to do something similar if you want this
Right.
module to work the same way, because like in Drupal 8, 9, and 10, you need to add things like token and path auto, and we
Mhm.
don't have that module, doesn't even appear in the list that we're checking. So we
Right.
probably need to like alter that and be like, insert the following, because we don't have those. But if you're using them on your Backdrop site, you're going to need them on Drupal 10. So yeah,
Okay.
I can maybe once we get it moving, if you can get the module actually working, I can have a look at it and see if we can introduce something really similar to what we did in upgrade status, Backdrop upgrade status into upgrade status, and see if we can get that kind of detail in there.
Okay.
Let's not worry about it yet. Just a sort of a thought.
Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to get this idea in front of people. So if anybody can help out, because I'm not sure how much farther Justin can take this project on his own. We might need some help there, but we could at least provide an update in terms of like, when you install it, what happens and how badly it's not working, or maybe I'll work with him to try and make sure one of us does that. Okay, so that's it.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. That's a great idea. I was
Mhm.
also thinking, if anyone is interested, it would be fun to run the migrate module, which we have for backdrop, along with the Drupal 7 migrate code to see what you get out of your Drupal 8 or 9 or 10 site. Because the significant differences between moving from backdrop and moving from Drupal 7 are essentially like the configuration for content types and stuff. And I don't know if the migrate module handles that in a way that needs to be different from Drupal 7 to backdrop, or if that's something you just define as part of your migration.
Right.
I'm not that familiar with migrations, at least using the migrate module migrations. But for someone who is, that would probably be a really quick thing to just be able to run through and just see kind of what you get, or if you run into any problems. Because if we could be like, here's your upgrade status module and here's your migrate module, put them together, ta-da, you're on Drupal 10, that would be, I think, a huge stress reliever for a lot of people who are looking for something to do with their Drupal 7 site for a little while. So
Yep.
that could be great.
And we are occasionally.
I've been working on a modern Drupal module to do that, but I hadn't really wrestled with that config problem that you just mentioned, so I think it's gonna be a lot harder than I thought it was.
I mean, it may or may not. Like maybe it's already just the way the migration handles it already. So I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe.
We do occasionally get that question from people, which is, you know, if I migrate to Drupal to backdrop, how hard is it to go to Drupal 9 or 10? And some people, I think, would be, as Jen just said, be reassured by knowing that there are tools that will help them if they make that decision later. So, hey.
Yeah, I hadn't really grappled with getting the settings across. I was thinking mostly the data and getting that to go across, which doesn't is relatively straightforward. I think
Okay.
that's a different kettle of worms of the config.
Well, it's 2/3 of the way through our meeting time, and Nate still hasn't shown up. So do we want to stall any longer? Do you want to wait on that issue till next week,
Let me
or
ping him one more time.
okay? So I will fill this time while Jen is doing that, in case anybody is watching this. One of the exciting points of this point in the development cycle is, well, first of all, for anybody who's not clear on this, we had a feature freeze, but we can still get bug fixes and UX improvements into the next release of Backdrop. So we still have another 2 weeks to fix bugs and get UX improvements into the thing. We just can't do any new features that are really completely new and or have significant like test changes, things like that. So don't quit working on the 1.25 release just yet, but start thinking about what you'd like to see in 1.26, because that's the exciting part right now. Is like, okay, we've got 4 months till our next release. What are the issues that you're most excited about or would like to see us get into that next release? And if we could get a jump start on any of those, that would be great. Did I give you long enough, Jen? Did you?
I heard laughing from the other room.
Okay.
But I did send him a message and said, we've talked about all of the issues except for one, and we're waiting for you. And then I heard, ha, ha, ha. So that could have been him being like, I really got to go, guys. And then they're like, no. And then he's like, ha, ha, ha. I don't know.
I am just skimming through the issue queue right now to see if there's any non-UX issues that we didn't talk about in our previous meeting. I will mention one sort of selfishly for a friend of mine. It's not a very common issue, but Wilbur posted an issue. I'm trying to find the UX number on, or the number on it. It's kind of when he's installing Backdrop using one of the, not Lando, the other one, DDEV. He gets some PHP deprecation notices that he submitted a PR that it has to do with the install script. So I think it's all fairly obscure, but I don't think they're very complicated. It looks like it's a pretty simple code switch that would fix these deprecation notices that he's getting. And if anybody, he just is looking for feedback on that.
Yeah, that's great.
Here it is, it's issue 6087.
Okay. Oh, great. It looks like he's already got some feedback on it. Archie Piano's
Okay.
left a suggestion, and so has Chiamlaluno.
Good.
That's fantastic. Nice job, backdrop team.
Well, I think we should either just end the meeting
Yeah.
Or talk about this issue without Nate. I'm not
Okay.
sure which issue. Which do you want to do?
Yeah, so let's talk about it real quick. The issue is the visibility rule for user compare 4029.
Yeah, that's right.
And the reason I was waiting for Nate is because he's the one that filed the most recent pull request. The original pull request for this issue looked a lot like Nate's, but we got a bunch of feedback from people that it was very confusing because people didn't understand what a first user or what a second user was, and those both appeared in the interface. And the reason that we mentioned first user and second user was to accommodate a very complex and very rare use case where you might have two user contexts coming from various different places around the site. The way this rule is going to be used probably 99% of the time is when you're comparing a user against the user who's currently logged in. And so I did a bunch of work to remove all of that terminology from the user interface. So it just said, who are you comparing to the logged in user? So you only ask people one question instead of asking them for two users. You ask just for the one, and you assume the first one is always the authenticated user. And that way, if someone does have one of those complex and rare use cases, they could install a contrib module that would add another visibility rule that would allow them to specify what the second user was. This would account for the most common use case without being confusing to people who are trying to use it. Nate looked at it. I don't think he knew about the conversation we had about the confusion between the two users, and he added back the option to specify a first user and a second user. He removed all of the language that mentioned a logged in user, and sort of just put things back the way they were at the beginning and offered a second pull request that was more similar to what we had before. So I wanted him to be here so that we could sort of say, hey, we've already been down this road and it was vetoed. But I do want to take a closer look at his pull request and see if there are any other changes in there that aren't just UI changes, that he might have done something with like the way the forms work or something that also would be good to preserve. So I don't want to discount the work he's done. All I did was look at his changes to the user interface and saw that they were sort of a regression. But Tim also did recommend a previous change, which was to remove any reference to a block in the visibility rule because it can also be applied to layouts. And I'm going to go ahead and rebase my pull request, make that change and push it back up. And then I'll also review Nate's pull request and see if there's anything in there that I can also incorporate into a newer version of mine before we ask him to re-review.
I would just add that, you know, if anybody has any suggestions on the UX here, that I think Jen would acknowledge that this last one was like the best we could come up with, but none of us considered it perfect. So if you have other ideas, and this is sort of what barring my red circle, this is roughly what it looked like with Jen's PR, and then Nate's just has 3 fields instead of 2. A little more flexibility, but like, as we said, for a fringe case, we think. So.
So yeah, another thing too would be if other people looked at it and think it's not that confusing. We did do a
Yeah.
bunch of other changes to like the description text and other stuff like that. Maybe all the other improvements are significant enough that asking for a first user and a second user doesn't immediately baffle people. So we're like, what? Why are there two users? I don't know. But that is the problem we're trying to solve. So just more eyes on it would be good.
I'm pretty sure I was like one of the first people to try out the original pull request and say, I don't understand this, so I might take a look again and see if I've gotten smarter or.
I mean,
Anyways.
it was confusing, and we also were facing issues with like it said user instead of user account and a bunch of there was just like a bunch of like very Drupal panels terminology that you'd be really accustomed to if you saw it in panels, but it didn't really fit in with the rest of Backdrop either. So it has sort of gotten a pretty significant makeover since then. Yeah. Anyway, that issue is number 4029. If anyone wants to have a look at it.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Well-
there's still no Nate, so maybe we should wrap it up.
Sure.
And I will tell him there's a video he can watch if he wants to see.
Sure. I'm gonna go ahead and stop